You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. Let's get to meet my guests this morning. And we'll be, that's those who are joining me to canvass these issues for you. In the studio is Abdul Malik Kukuba, co-editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Joining us via Zoom, Kofi Bento, lawyer and senior vice president, Imani Africa. Mary Awalana Ada is programs manager, Ghana Integrity Initiative, the GII. And Yao Boabeng Asamoah, director of communications of the New Patriotic Party. Ladies and gentlemen joining us via Zoom, good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Good morning, Samson, and good morning to the rest of the team and to the listeners as well.
Right. Our other guests will join us in the course of the program. And I need to announce from the outset that my production informed me that in the course of the week, seeking to get a representation from the NDC, there have been some difficulty. And because of that, as we speak presently, there's no representation for the NDC. I say representation because the intention was to have an NDC person join Yao Boabeng Asamoah as well. Thank you very much. But you know that there have been many times that we have done the show, and according to your desires, not hosted politicians at all. Right. So let's hear the president briefly, and hear also the special prosecutor, Kisi Ejabing. They have all been speaking in the course of the last week because of the International Anti-Corruption Day as declared by the UN on the 9th of December every year.
Has undertaken arguably the boldest initiative since our nation attained independence nearly 65 years ago to reform and strengthen the capacity of our institutions to tackle corruption in the public sector. Charity, they say, begins at home. And that is why so far, every single alleged act of corruption leveled against any of my appointees has been investigated by independent bodies such as STRAJ, the CID, and in some cases by Parliament itself. It is not my job to clear or convict any person accused of wrongdoing. My government has undertaken arguably the boldest initiative since our nation attained independence nearly 65 years ago to reform and strengthen the capacity of our institutions to tackle corruption in the public sector. Charity, they say, begins at home. And that is why so far, every single alleged act of corruption leveled against any of my appointees has been investigated by independent bodies such as STRAJ, the CID, and in some cases by Parliament itself. It is not my job to clear or convict any person accused of wrongdoing or of engaging in acts of corruption. That is the job of the courts. My job is to act on allegations of corruption by referring the issue or issues to the proper investigative agencies for the relevant inquiry and necessary action, including, if required, the suspension of the affected official pending the conclusion of investigations. That is exactly what has been done since I assumed the mantle of national leadership on 7th January 2017. Thus it was that in 2019, I suspended the then acting head of the Public Procurement Agency from office after conflict of interest and corruption allegations had been leveled against him. Following recommendations from SHRAJ, based on their investigation, I removed him from office in October 2020, and the Office of Special Prosecutor is seized with the matter of prosecution. If an appointee is cleared of any wrongdoing, the evidence adduced and recommendation made by these agencies after the investigations are concluded are what clear the accused persons, not myself. None of these agencies has ever indicated any pressure from the executive over their investigations. There are some who refuse to accept my method of proceeding and have characterized me as a clearing agent. Because for them, the mere allegation without more is enough to merit condemnation of the public official, even though they did not apply this principle when they were in office. For my part, I will not set aside due process in the fight against corruption, no matter how much opprobrium this incurs for me.
As part of its Pressure for Progress drive, an annual Ghana Corruption League table to assess perceived levels of public sector corruption in the estimation of experts and business people. In aid of this, public agencies will be ranked against each other on a corruption barometer, and the results will be published every 9 December. The OSP would vigorously investigate and prosecute cases of alleged or suspected corruption and corruption-related offenses and recover proceeds of such offenses through property tracing of tainted property and currency, in line with our vision of rendering corruption a costly enterprise. We cannot continue on the path of see no evil, hear no evil. Let us expose the evil of corruption. Let us eschew corrupt practice marked by undeserved attainment of wealth to secure undue advantage in all spheres of life to one of merit-based rewards. This is our sure chance to curb corruption. The OSP, ladies and gentlemen, has completed a review of all the alleged cases of corruption and corruption-related offenses before it. Currently, the OSP is investigating 31 active cases, and it will, in due course, commence the prosecution in the courts of the cases it considers probatively strong. There is no case commenced by the OSP pending in the courts at the moment. I inherited one court case, that is the Republic against Mahama Ayariga and another, which I discontinued in October after a careful scrutiny of the available evidence led me to conclude that the Republic will be unable to prove its case on the standard of proof required in criminal cases, that is, proof beyond reasonable doubt.
Right, so you heard first the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and Kisi Ejabeng, the Special Prosecutor, all talking about, President talking about what he has done, and Kisi Ejabeng talking also a bit about what he has done and what he intends to do. He says 2022, he has about 31 cases that he's going to pursue and has reviewed all of them and has a number of other things to do, to the point he says he will be making corruption something that nobody wants to engage in. He's promising that in his tenure, he is going to commence activities in 2022, quote, to prevent, suppress, and repress corruption more efficiently and effectively than has ever been done in this republic, unquote. When the president was speaking, he gave a litany of legislations that have been done in his regime, the Right to Information Act. And sometimes I stop to ask myself, when the politicians are taking, glory for some of these things, sometimes it's a bit of a difficulty because that law, for example, I can't imagine the pressure that was brought to bear before it was passed. And some of us who had the privilege of being made to help in the campaign, spearheaded by the coalition, the GII, and the rest of them, had to literally be on the floor of Parliament all the time to ensure that it was done. Well, whatever it is, he supervised and it has been done. He assented it as law. So he speaks about plenty laws that he has ensured have been passed. He talks about the digitization drive that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the Vice President, has spearheaded. And clearly, I suppose we all admit that the digitization is something that helps to minimize corruption at the port, at the various places, at the courts, and all the other places where the human face is removed, human interaction is removed. So he speaks about that and speaks about the funding that he has given to anti-corruption bodies. The police have had about 160% increase in their budgetary allocations, he says. Parliament has had over 100% increase. He mentions several others, Auditor General, Judiciary, the Attorney General, Shraj, and the rest of them. So, what do you say? Let's begin with the people who have been watching this particular space all the time. Mary, what do you say about what the president feels or says his regime has done about corruption, and what the special prosecutor also says?
Very much, Samson. Let me proceed on the basis that the president is comfortably placed to proceed on the tangent he did, particularly if you look at what they said they would do in their first term per their manifesto, which was heavily skewed towards the passage of legislations to fight corruption. It is true that if it comes to the issue of passing laws that seek to fight corruption, this government has particularly passed a lot. It is also true that in the past we have sought to do same. If you remember, in 2016, the PFM Act was passed to strengthen what we had already with the Financial Administration Act. And so it's not just today we are passing laws. But then also, again, you as a lawyer would also agree that for a president who is a lawyer, passing laws would not be a challenge for him at all. What we need to all consider or speak to is the fact that laws in themselves do not, and let me say, do not implement or do not take away the challenge of the fight against corruption. We are all aware that since independence, we have tried as we can to put in place legislations that have the potential to nip the bud of corruption from our society. Thus far, we have come. We have not seen much. If you do a cursory review of what the NACAP document speaks to, we have put in place in several regimes draconian measures where people were killed for taking loans of 50 Ghana cedis at a time. People have gone to prison for others. Very, very, very insignificant complaints. We also know that in other governments, they've talked about zero tolerance for corruption and others. This, when it comes to implementation, actual implementation is where we have found ourselves wanting. And so for the president to say that he has done a lot when it comes to the area of legislations, we do not fault him at all. But we want him to proceed cautiously because legislations in themselves do not implement and do not bring about the success we all require. When the president talks about funding the institutions with some instances going up to almost 200 percentage points. If it is true, we do not have any evidence to say no. We are saying that what we need to see is the institutions doing a better job at the fight against corruption. Let me take SHRAJ, for instance. SHRAJ is the National Anti-Corruption Agency. Per our constitution, it's a constitutional creature which has a mandate to fight corruption as one of its 3 mandates. Today, we have less than 200 SHRAJ offices across Ghana. And so if we are talking about resourcing the institutions to fight corruption, we would want to see a SHRAJ that is located in every district, every of the 250-something districts that we have in this country. We would want to see a SHRAJ that is so mandated that it can do its work without any challenges. And so we are talking about resources, but we are also saying that these resources are not enough. And mind you, the people of Ghana trusted that the president whom we gave our mandate to superintend the affairs of state would be as a matter of agency, as he promised us, fight corruption, resource these institutions, he said. And so if he is doing that, and SHRAJ is getting just about 20-something%, whilst others are getting over 100%, then we are saying that he should come again. And it's not just SHRAJ, it's the Yokos and others. Yes, some money is given to them, but is that enough? We again say that when you talk about the RTI law, this is a very fantastic law that has been passed, which is supposed to facilitate the acquiring or acquisition of information for civil society and also for the media, particularly journalists who want to do investigations. How is this law's implementation progressing? We have a commission which has been set up, and under the constraints with which it is operating currently, if I want to talk about some of them, we do not see, but they are doing some good work, and we need to encourage the commission for that. Unfortunately, the basic infrastructure, which the OSP talked about for 3 years, and for which he now has an office, is the same challenge the commission is grappling with. And so when we set up some of these mechanisms and we do not resource them enough to do their work, then we are setting ourselves to fail, because we need places where we can conveniently go when the public sector institutions, which believe that they have the right to continue to either ignore or reject our request for information, we should have an avenue to go to. And how many people know where they should go to when they need this information we are talking about? Let me conclude by saying that for the Office of the Special Prosecutor, his comments when he talks about the fight against corruption is going to ensure that he represses, he suppresses, and he ensures that he's fighting. We support him wholeheartedly. But let's remember that we are coming from a past where we have heard a lot of talk, which is not being complemented by action. And so we would like to tread cautiously with our optimism. We would want to see action. He says he's gotten about 31 cases, which he is currently investigating. At a point, we would want to know which of the 31 are corruption related, which he is pursuing to go to court with. When that happens, then we would begin to have the trust that this office is actually going to suppress, is going to repress, and is going to vigorously pursue the anti-corruption agenda. He says he has a 7-year mandate. Yes, the people of Ghana require that he gives us an update on a 6-monthly basis on the dispensation of that mandate. We would want to see if he begins and we see one case going to court and he pursuing it, then we would begin to also believe that it's not another case where we are seeing a special prosecutor in office for 3 years who has not been able to prosecute one single case as we had in the past. my initial comments.
right.
But to end, I would want to say that digitization, again, is the way to go. For the developed world and other countries who are doing a fantastic job in this regard, we have seen over time that in digitizing processes, it takes away the human factor. In digitizing, it helps us to seal a lot of gaps, and it helps with the generation of revenue or the increasing of such. But then, in our case, we have seen that some of our digitization agenda is being curtailed and is being suppressed by the institutions and the agencies who are supposed to promote and champion these. And so when the president speaks to the fact that it is not his business to send people or prosecute people or investigate people, he has a duty to submit these complaints to the appropriate agencies. We say, yes, we agree. But it is his duty as the appointing authority to ensure that when things are not being done right, people are called to order and people are sanctioned for wrongdoing by either asking them to step aside or allowing them to go, as he spoke to in his inaugural address in 2017, when he said public service is public service and not a place for making money. My initial comments.
Thank you. But the OSP, you speak about the 31 cases, wanting to know which one of these cases is finished with investigation and will be prosecuting. The special prosecutor says these are cases that he has finished work on and will be putting some before the court starting January, except that he doesn't want to name people because it is unfair and due process is not the best thing to do, to put the names of people out even before you hit the court and people start to speculate about them and say all sorts of things about them.
I believe, if I heard him correctly, I think I have also had other engagements as well where I heard that some of the cases, when he mentioned them, had to do with family issues, had to do with people's administrative injustice issues. And so I think at a point, some of these cases may not go to court. Not all the 31 would go. That's why I am saying that. But in any case, it is a fact that if he does not want to present people's names at this point, it is right that he wants to proceed on that tangent. And we support him, as I said in the beginning. But then what we would want to do, or him to do going forward, is to ensure that what he is giving feedback to Ghanaians, or the monitoring he has done, which is supposed to inform Ghanaians about, is such that when we pick it, we are able to say that, oh, the special prosecutor currently is going to court with 10 cases, and all these 10 cases have to do with issues that have a relation to corruption, as its mandate speaks to, or it has to do with issues around prevention that he is working on. It has to do with issues around asset recovery that he is going to pursue. So we want to see that happen, and we want to be told that, but to be told that 31, and then at the end of the day, you see only about 5 of them being worthy of pursuing, would be disappointing to the people of Ghana. So we want accurate information on some of those things.
All right. And you mentioned that we have had areas where we have had mantras like zero tolerance for corruption. President Mahama said corruption is mass murder. We have to deal with it. And you speak about all these times the politicians' emphasis or focus on passing of laws. And you say that is not enough. But that is the basis, that is the foundation, isn't it? The president talks about the many laws, the witness protection law. He talks about the OSP that he set up. He talks about the RTI. He talks about, the new change that has been made to the criminal, law, where some cases were tagged as misdemeanors, corruption cases were tagged as misdemeanors, and now have been appropriately tagged as, felonies where the sanction is now a minimum of 12 to 25 years or so. He touts all of these. You don't think that, if anything at all, this is a good way to build the momentum to fighting corruption properly?
Thank you very much, Samson. I believe that at this point, I suspect you would agree with me that we do not need more laws. What we need is to strengthen what we already have. Let me quickly say that when he talks about the amendment of the Criminal Offences Act to make corruption a second-degree felony, if I'm correct, we already had a law, the Criminal Offences and Procedures Act, which already indicated that anybody who was found culpable of a corrupt act could go to prison for 25 years.
That's right.
And so sometimes we just want to go to Parliament to just make the process firmer. Yes, fine. But we already had a law which we could operationalize. And for me, I thought it wasn't one of the critical things we needed to do, because we already had a law to cover that. Again, with the Witness Protection Act that we passed, we have a whistleblower legislation that we are working with, which is not too effective as we speak. If you go to the institutions that are supposed to be receiving complaints and working on them, they will tell you that on an annual basis, we do not even receive 10 complaints, let alone to talk about pursuing dates. In the whistleblower legislation, we have a compensation mechanism which has never been activated. These are some of the things we should be pursuing.
Because the fund has not been set up.
Exactly. And the Attorney General has the mandate to implement this law, and the fund is supposed to be set up by him to be run. Again, let me quickly say that I was in another meeting where the Witness Protection Act issue came up, and I asked the question, do we have the agency that is supposed to ensure that this act is operationalizing, set up? This has not been done. Do we have its regulations passed? This has not been done. So it's not about just passing acts and ticking boxes to say that I said I'll pass this law and I've passed it. It's about actualizing the law and ensuring that it operates. And if we do not put in place the mechanisms and architecture to ensure that these laws are working, then we will be shooting ourselves in the foot.
Okay.
And will not be making any progress. And we continue to pass laws. And at a point, in some nations, I was doing a review of the ECOWAS protocol on the fight against corruption. And I realized that in some nations, we have laws, specific frameworks for fighting corruption. Just one law that fights corruption, and this is what they work with. We are fighting corruption with several different laws, and yet we have the challenge. Yet we see non-compliance.
Right.
And those who put the people in those places are not doing anything to ensure that people are afraid to work, despite the huge number of laws we have passed.
So as far as you are concerned, these, legal procedure issues, like you said, we don't need more laws. What we need is making them, the laws that already exist, to bite. This, preaching, there's too much of it. For example, you mentioned the era of zero tolerance for corruption, which was preached by President Kufuor. Yet, he was accused. His era, whilst he was preaching this, he sought to undermine, independent anti-corruption bodies by setting up an office of corruption within his presidency. And it was clearly seen to be sort of a clearing agent, the tag that the president is uncomfortable with. And it was at this same time of this mantra that his own party chairman was involved, allegedly, in cutting cash in a pickup van into the presidency. So, as far as you're concerned, these things are useless. We don't need them. What can the president do beyond what he says is due process. Why is the expectation on the president to do something when the allegations come? What is he supposed to do?
The president he is supposed to do a lot of things. And let me say that it's not just from this president. It's been an issue we have continued to experience over time. People say a lot of things, they end up not doing much. Let me add again here that the UNCAC, the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, under the various reviews, and the first one clearly mentioned that when it comes to the robustness of our legislations and regulations to fight the canker of corruption, Ghana is in conformity with all of them, putting in place preventive measures, putting in place legislations, and it mentions and chronicles most of the legislations from our Contract Act to whichever we have. And so it's not for the lack of the laws. And if UNCAC, the peer review, has stated this much, then it means that at a certain point, the leadership of this country, then I'm speaking to what exactly it is we should be doing, is to allow process to go on, which the president says he allowed to go on. But then at some point, people are investigating. Then the president comes out to declare that my people have been found not to be guilty. Why don't you allow the institution of state which did the investigation to make such pronouncements? When you do that immediately, you are interfering with the process. Okay. Particularly when we hear announcements about 2 days, and then in the next ensuing 2 days, you are already clearing such persons. But for the president to again say that all those of us who indicate the contrary and say that he has cleared people are doing the bidding of the opposition is very unfortunate. Let me add that Ghanaians are thinking that we are expecting that the president fulfills his mandate for which we voted him, and we trusted. Let me say, we trusted the word of the president because we didn't have the contrary to go by, because it is trust. And for that trust, we believe that in whatever it is, when people are cited, let them step aside. And you have appointing authority. And just like it's happened in other places, let me say that in Malawi, in South Africa, and other places, when people are cited, they are asked to go immediately. It sends a signal that there is actually a zero tolerance policy when it comes to the fight against corruption. But if you remember, just about 2 months ago, we had issue with the Minister of Finance and some of the dubious dealings that had happened with the Sputnik and also with the contracts that brought about the airport, the antigen testing at the airport. We spoke vigorously to this, only to be ridiculed and spoken about and laughed at certain points. Parliament instituted a probe and made recommendations. Why are we not implementing? So for us, we said that when some of these things happen, and that is not all, there are a lot of instances that we go by. When we say this, we are making these calls based on what we have seen, based on what we have heard. And the evidence down there suggests that the talking is not commensurate with the action.
Thank you very much, Mary Awalana. Ada is with the Ghana Anti-Corruption, Ghana Integrity Initiative. That is the foremost anti-corruption institution, if you like, CSO in Ghana. And that is the Transparency International's wing here in this part of the world. Now, thank you, Yabuamia Samoa. I understand you have joined us. Do we have Kofi Bentel also joining us?
Samson, I'm here.
Great to have you. Hello, Kofi.
Yes, hello, Samson.
Great. So, what do you say? The president, from the outline he gives us, if you listen, you find that he has a compelling story of what he has done and contributed to the fight. And yet, his story doesn't seem to wash for, I don't know if I am allowed to say, for a greater section of the Ghanaian populace, because they don't seem to see the results of the things he talks about.
Yes, Samson, I'm one of those people who is quite disappointed about what has happened in actual fact concerning the fight against corruption. I think as a country, we failed abysmally in the last few years. And it's on the background of someone like the president who we believed will fight corruption for many reasons. We cannot cite him, at least in his previous political life, as somebody who was corrupt. He said it is not corrupt. We believed him. He said he was going to use the Annas principle. We believed him. And so many things which gave us hope that this was going to be a presidency that will fight corruption. Indeed, when President Kufuor declared a zero tolerance for corruption, some people laughed. But when this president said he was going to fight corruption, we actually did believe him. So maybe the expectations were quite high. And unfortunately, the performance has been abysmal. Of course, he is not the one to convict, but we all know that signaling when it comes to corruption is extremely important. And the signaling from this presidency and from this president has been very bad. Indeed, although he's not the one to go and convict people who are corrupt or whatever, he's also not the one to be clearing them and be making pronouncements about people who are under investigation. That really was terrible. And then even if he's not the one to convict, leadership requires you to make the right selections, and you will be judged based on the people you surround yourself with. This is the president who appointed the person to the procurement agency who was implicated in very serious corruption, all right? And it is not the first time. We know about the task force, If you consistently are found to be appointing people who are found to be corrupt, and in very grievous ways right around you, it reflects on you. So it's unfortunate, but we have to say that the legacy of this president when it comes to fighting corruption will be terrible. And we need to say it as it is because we don't have to repeat these things. There's a lot going around. Today we have e-levy. And the basic thing about e-levy is
hold on briefly for me. Was it the suggestion that the president ought to have known that ABA-AJ, the procurement boss, will be corrupt?
No. The president ought to have done due diligence, and he ought to have picked incorruptible or at best good people who were not likely to be corrupt. And what I'm saying is that after the fact, if we find out that you picked somebody who was corrupt, it reflects on you. And if that is not the only time, but we consistently find, we cited a task force and a couple of other times that you tend to pick people who end up in these corrupt schemes, there is a certain reflection on you. So I'm making that point, and that's a matter of fact. Now, after they have also been found culpable of corruption, we find instead of you giving the signaling to work on making sure that it doesn't happen again, we find you clearing them. We find him making statements to the effect, as if to say it doesn't matter. And so I'm saying that, look, if we look at his own history as a person, it really doesn't suggest he's a corrupt person. But if we look at his presidency, what has gone on, his appointments, his appointees, his statements whilst in office, and the things that have happened whilst in office, the Auditor General was run out of office. And today we have a situation where nobody is talking about the the Public Accounts Committee. We have cases at the Auditor General, millions of dollars to be recovered. Nobody is talking about them. And we are going to use e-levy to raise new revenue. Okay. Where is the waste and corruption discussion in our, financial matters? So, look, let it be clearly said, and I'm saying so because we have to find a way not to repeat this.
Kofi, I still want to understand you. I still want to understand you on this point. So, ABA-AJ, when he was appointed, at the time of his appointment, his private bank account, according to the work by the Shraj and the OSP, Martinamidu then, gave us the indication that his private bank account held only about 40,000 Ghana cedis. And at the time, Manasseh Azuria Wene, busted him. He had accounts that held in excess of 45 million Ghana cedis. That is within 3 years. And he used his office as a chief executive officer of the Public Procurement Authority to do these things. You are saying that the president ought to have known that he was likely to be a corrupt person and that he will sell contracts, he will set up companies on the side and do these deals?
Yes, he ought to have known. He ought to have known so let me explain how. He is the appointing authority. They work under his authority. Now, if the due diligence was done, then the man's proclivities or the man's potential to be corrupt may have been discovered. Let's assume that he was never corrupt until he got into office. During his tenure in office, over the 3-year period, when his bank account was going, this is what we have national security and whatever and all those things for, who are snooping on all kinds of people and tracking and chasing and, cloning phones and doing all kinds of things. So he didn't see it. And if he didn't see it, that is a lapse in the system. Now, after Manasseh, with very few resources, and look, the work Manasseh did was not CIA level work. It was straightforward. He walked into places, asked simple questions, things that any diligent person who was minded to find these things out would have found out. And Manasseh busted him. And when he was found out, even now, we are not sure where things are concerning that particular investigation. The statements coming out of the office, did not signal that this was a situation that, really concerned the presidency much. Now, as we speak, I have read a paper concerning the recent appointments regarding procurement board, etc., where the law has been breached. So I'm saying I have read that the paper by a procurement expert where the law has clearly been breached. People who are not qualified to be there are there. And we are not hearing much about that as well. So I'm saying that the acts and utterances of this president do not bear out the trust we held in him as somebody who was, going to fight corruption. Unfortunately, that is the fact. And it's particularly disappointing because he came in with very, very high credentials. And we thought this was our hope that somebody was going to really stand up and fight corruption. We should find a way to avoid this in future.
He has set up the OSP to go after the corrupt.
Well,
he has, as he says, funded the anti-graft organizations in a way that has never happened in the history of this country. That is his commitment. What do you say?
Something you and I know because we've been fighting for years for RTI, we fought for OSP and all those things. When it comes to fighting corruption, our leaders tend to make laws, set up institutions, and appoint people, and then leave it there. Charge, the potential of these institutions to do work, real work, is somehow lost immediately after the law is passed, the institution is formed, and the people are put in office. And so you find politicians running over themselves, and Mary was alluding to that, to appoint people and do all these things. And after that, we don't see any action. It's unfortunate that the OSP has not seen any real anti-corruption action. And all these institutions you're talking about, we had a ministry for procurement, all right? And what did they do? So we have a plethora of these institutions. And I agree with Mary. We need to collapse all of them. OSP, YOCO, all of them should be collapsed, and let's leave only one and empower them. And indeed, with or without the plethora of institutions, if you have a leader at the top who is signaling the right things, we will be effective in fighting corruption. On the other hand, we can multiply laws and institutions onto ourselves, the law against causing financial loss, and we have all kinds of things going on, as you are aware. If we don't get the leadership, it doesn't matter if we have 100 institutions against corruption, we will still be a corrupt people.
But do you give him credit for the digitization drive he talks about, that he says is one sure way of curbing corruption? And the vice president has been on this, making sure that almost every institution where money changes hands and people interact, you reduce the human interaction and you are reducing corruption. Do you agree with him on that?
I absolutely agree with him on that. The digitization drive formalizes things. It creates a paper trail. it causes transactions to be tracked from A to B. And that is the greatest institutional and structural change that we can put in place to track people's wealth, like people's bank accounts. You can see it there. You can even track where the money came from. And if you did some better investigation, you'll be able to find out even more. So for me, I think we should credit the president with that and also the vice president for championing that. Then again, it quickly comes to mind, why are we doing what we are doing to this digitalization with e-levy, which is going to run people back into this,
so we'll get to e-levy.
So
we'll get to e-levy when we go to Parliament.
But we should not be clawing back on that.
Okay, thank you. Yabu, thank you very much. You must be very busy this morning, looking to see to a successful conference in the Baba Yara Sports Stadium in Kumasi. Thank you for joining us. Please unmute your microphone.
Samson, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you very much for having me this morning.
So what do you say that the president gives us evidence of over a dozen legislations, anti-corruption legislation, to tighten, as it were, where the holes are not properly tightened, and to put up the institutions that will fight corruption, and yet he doesn't seem to get any credit for that. He's not too happy about that.
Something I am very happy at what I'm hearing this morning. The ecosystem for fighting corruption is awake, because all of us have roles to play, and the critique, the appreciation, the understanding from outside sources, outside meaning that the people who are not directly in charge, is very impactful, because it is part of the process. Establishing transparency, external criticism, CSO involvement is all part of the process. I'm very, very happy this morning to hear what's happening, because it's a process, and Ghana, if we continue along this line, we'll have one of the best anti-corruption environments in a few years to come. Now, if I may, I can say that the president, the executive and legislative authority in these matters rest first with the conception of the measures, and second with the legal rules they are able to establish, and third with the institutions that come out of the legal rules, fourth, the personnel to run the institutions. Then the operations become a matter of joint responsibility. We can't establish laws, regulations, institutions, staff the institutions, and the responsibility still remains with the president. And that's what the president tried to say earlier. I think it's a duty of those who are empowered by law and who are put in charge of institutions, thus empowered, to come out and be bold and fight this canker on behalf of all of us without fear or favor. And that is why I'm encouraged this morning. We are getting to the point where we are realizing. I listened to Mary Ada very, very clearly, very consciously, and I listened to Kofi, my big brother-in-law. Not brother-in-law as in marriage, brother-in-law as in law. Samson, are you there?
That's right.
Samson, can you still hear me?
I do.
So what I'm saying is that as a society, let us count our blessings in the sense of an executive cumulatively over the years who have invested, one, in accepting the concept that we need to fight corruption and we need to develop mechanisms for doing so, and two, who have set up a plethora of rules. Yes, I heard Mary say that the rules are many, but it's important that the many rules are also enforced. So the plethora of rules, and three, institutions to implement those rules. Now, you also have people who have been appointed to sit in those institutions and implement the rules. So our difficulty as a society now, as a nation now, is operationalization, implementation. Where are we with that? Can we still wait? Should we still wait? Is it the duty of the president to still come and operationalize? Or can we say that the people who have been put in charge should themselves begin to be accountable? Because if you are not performing, you should be held to account, not only by the president sacking you, but by civil society pointing it out. A civil society saying they are satisfied with the work of Shraj and its leadership over the years. A civil society and its capacity to deliver. A civil society saying that they are comfortable with Yoko and its performance over the few years. Shouldn't we begin to question, engage, analyze operationalization? Because that is where the crux of the matter is. Once you have the rules, once you have the institutions, once you have the personnel, and once you have the resources, even in terms of resources, you need to question, when we question whether the resources are enough, we need to ask whether they are enough for what or for what not. Can you pick low-hanging fruits? Can a little resource do a lot more if you are tightly focused, or you need everything you think you need? Because what is an optimal level of resource? We don't know. And that is why in crafting the Office of Special Prosecutor Law, what we did was that we tried to create a platform for optimizing resources and minimizing risk through the board that was set up. The board seats all the anti-corruption agencies in Ghana, including civil society. And in the last couple of years, the board chair of the Office of Special Prosecutor was actually from the Ghana Integrity Initiative, Madam Linda Kwaf. So what we are trying to do is optimize our social consciousness, optimize the environment, reduce risk together, and enhance capacity together.
You must have heard the Special Prosecutor, Kiseja Bing. He seemed poised. He seemed to be ready to do his work. But like he said, if you don't give him the money, all the good things he has spoken about will remain intentions. He's happy that he has a 10-story building, but only one floor is ready so far, and he's trying to manage. He doesn't have a board. He doesn't have a board. He needs money. He needs to have his own equipment and investigators to do the work. So if you, by law, make a beautiful edifice or institution and bring the money, you don't want to give him the money, how is it going to work?
Thank you. I have followed closely. One of my pet projects is the Office of Special Prosecutor. So I've followed closely its establishment and its progress. First of all, it is progress that we have a 10-story building. It is absolute progress because Martin Amidu started from a 3-bedroom house, as he famously insisted on telling us all the time. So it is progress. Two, I think that if you have one floor and you are still pulling in the money and the resources, you use the one floor to deliver. And how do I say this? If you haven't gotten all your if you don't have all your complement of investigators and prosecutors, that's why you have a board with institutions that specialize in investigation and prosecution and have the experience already. So
the board is not in place.
So, Mr. Kiseja Bing,
the board is not in place.
What?
He doesn't have a board yet.
Yeah. So that's a thing to do with the government. So we must push the government to deliver a board quickly. Because what I'm trying to say is that Mr. Kiseja Bing should utilize what he has and crisply zero in on perhaps 5 or 10 cases he can deliver, instead of going on a broad front to attempt 31 cases. Because then you would need a whole lot of resources you don't have yet.
This is a serious and sensitive office.
Yeah,
it's a security place.
Something. I'm not at this point saying that he is not right or he's wrong.
So if we believe in it, why don't we just make the funds available? Why do we want him to start piecemeal?
Strategically, first of all, a board shouldn't be the biggest hindrance. A board is the duty of the government, and the board is institutional. So all the government has to do is prompt those institutions to bring their people to the board. As I told you already, the board is designed to accommodate all the anti-corruption agencies. So fixing a board shouldn't be a problem. Now, if you fix the board, monies to build the office are on two fronts. First, monies to keep building, expanding the institution in terms of capacity, expertise, and all that. If that is not coming in fast enough and it's long term, you can still proceed on that front.
Yes,
and
what he has been asking for, he's practically not getting. And as we understand,
I'm breaking down his needs.
As we understand, the government wants to know his spending, as it were, by the minute. But this is a security place. If I am going to investigate you, and you know that I have set aside this amount of money to investigate you, the finance minister, why should I do that? So why is he not being given what he needs?
Something. So I'm saying that his resources are on two levels. The first level of resource is that which builds the institution long term, institutionalizes his own capacity to investigate and prosecute, recruit people and train them to fill the 10-story building. That is a need, and I agree it's not been met yet. But I am also saying that if you have 31 cases and you have a need for institutionalization, then you may be fighting a broad front war that may not deliver. But you can narrow in what very little you have now and exploit and utilize your risk sharing. In other words, zero in on 5 cases, utilize Yoko, who is on your board, utilize NIB, who is on your board, utilize CID, who is on your board, and use your minimal resources to put those 5 cases in court. And then at the end of the year, you can proudly say that I prosecuted 5 cases and I won 3. So I'm making a case for more money to prosecute 20 next year. And that's very credible.
Okay. Hold on for me.
But I don't
Thank
have
you.
Anybody.
That point is made. Hold on for me. And let me come to Kweku. But Kweku, I may start you on this note. As someone who is starting, the bureaucracy and the public service attitude. He's going to say, Yoko, I need this. Police, I need this. And they are looking and asking, who are you? Asking us to do this or do that. And we don't have as much trust in these institutions, and that's why we have set him up. So if the things that he is going to trail, these people also have an eye on them, where did we go?
Yeah, I've been doing a quiet monitoring of the Office of the Special Prosecutor in recent times, and I believe the president, and for that matter, government, must wake up and commit themselves to that particular project. Look, why should it take 5 months? Maybe there may be good reasons, but I am unable to, admit that a 5-month delay relative to inaugurating a board for that office is acceptable. I'm unable to accept it. Because we all know the essential value and the function of the board. Without the board being in place, there are certain things that office cannot do, even employing the personnel.
He, in fact, is going to be reduced to what Martin Amidu was saying. He is now paying attention to HR matters, administrative issues, when he's supposed to pay attention to the real fight.
Hopefully not, but I get your drift. And that is why I asked for the president and government to wake up. After the Martin Amidu saga, which was like an anticlimax to all of us, very disappointing, we ought not to repeat the same scenario. And I'm not here to allocate blame left, right, center. But as for the president, he has the ultimate responsibility to ensure that that creature of law, the Office of the Special Prosecutor, works and works effectively. Look, at this stage, the personnel, very few, ineffective. Even salaries, the salary structure There's a challenge there. They've been negotiating something with the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. And it's as if they want to treat them the same way the public service entities are treated. You see, we are forgetting the nature of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, a very specialized agency of a security dimension. Even their payments and things, they are insisting that you should go through the gift miss. I'm sure you know about that. There too, there's a challenge. We've got to be creative. We have to be innovative. Look, corruption, to fight corruption is not an easy thing. It's not a routine matter, especially in the case in our historical context, from independence to today. The lady referred to somebody who went for a loan, 50,000. Of course, it's not exactly the correct picture, but I know what she was doing. We have even used the gun to fight corruption, and we failed in the anger, fury.
Yeah.
So if we set up such a specialized agency by an act of parliament, we ought to commit resources to its implementation.
So the special prosecutor has asked for money, and he's been giving something he feels is pittance.
Yes.
Because the kind of, facilities he requires to make him independent, to do what he has to do. Even one of those facilities, the money that he has been giving, may have to be spent on just one, and it's over. He doesn't have any money.
He needs forensic lab. He needs a cyber security lab. He needs to install some servers and all these things. And the kind of money being asked for, up to 1.2 million Ghana cedis, could take care of that expenditure for 2 or 3, 4 years. But of course, the system says, look, we have difficulties. So you take about 147 or so for the 2022 budget. My point really is that if we want to fight corruption, and I'm not for a moment doubting the commitment of the president or government to fighting corruption, but prove it. Okay, prove it. Because look at Kofi's skeptical cynicism and things. And Kofi, this is not a negative jibe at you. I understand where he's coming from. Okay, he's somebody who is being out there fighting.
Sounds frustrated.
Yeah, exactly, ma. That's why I can understand where Kofi is coming from. I don't share all the conclusions.
Because to hear him say collapse all of these.
Yes, understand.
That for me is surprising.
Yes, understanding. And this is a very learned, experienced patriot. He loves his country, and you can feel it. So to be honest with you, yes, certain good things have happened. We need laws to fight corruption. But as the lady pointed out, we have sufficient laws. So the institutions too, we have them. But we are not resourcing the institutions enough. That's the point. So to be honest with you, because of all of us have been involved in this anti-corruption campaign for a long time. And sometimes it's distressing that you only end up repeating yourself. See, let me just deal with one specific, and that's where some of my differences with Kofi is. The Public Procurement Board matter, the ABAJ matter. When Manasseh's documentary was put on air.
Contracts for sale,
August 21st, 2019. The following day, the president reacted. It was the following day, August 22nd.
Suspension.
Yes, suspended him, wrote to Shraj, and Shraj, relative to the conflict of interest angle, sent the matter to the Office of the Special Prosecutor relative to the allegations of corruption, and asked that they should trigger investigations into those things. A year or so later, Shraj brought a report, 27th October 2020, to the president. He accepted.
And sacked him.
Yes, and sacked him. And then said, well, Office of the Special Prosecutor, proceed with your investigations and prosecutions if possible. Kofi's view is the due diligence prior to appointment. And I saw the drift you were coming from. Look, there is no due diligence that could be perfect, 100%. Especially relative to the element of the human nature. You couldn't predict. ABAJ has a very fine record in terms of public service. There was a time some allegations were made when he was at the Ghana Water company and things. Those allegations were investigated and proved to be false. So in terms of his public record, it's a very fine one. And in terms of the expertise, when it comes to public procurement, he's one of the best. I'm not talking here about the moral angle that came out. But if you are talking of his professionalism, his knowledge, his expertise, he's one of the best.
Yeah, we all relied on him.
Yes.
You know.
So all those could have factored into the appointment. And then subsequently, a journalist does investigations and certain things come out. What else do you expect the president to do? If indeed the president had not acted the way he acted, triggering investigations through SRAJ and the Office of Special Prosecutor, suspending him and subsequently sacking him, I would have found the president guilty and be siding with Kofi. But otherwise, Kofi is expecting him by the context, the logic of Kofi's drive is that the president ought to be like God and be able to read into somebody's mind and heart what the person would eventually do.
How does the state explain why such a person is still not prosecuted? His stolen monies, quote unquote, have not been taken away from him. Property that he may have made, you know, through the 3 years that he had only 40,000 in his account, but managed within that period to mobilize as much as, you know, 5 million and more.
I'm happy
that these properties have also not been taken away.
I'm happy you are a lawyer and you are the one asking me these questions. All those must go through due process. Even if the journalist has exposed the man's quote-unquote corrupt posturing or activities, you must take him through the process. As we sit here, SRAJ has finished its job.
Yeah.
The matter is really seized by the Office of the Special Prosecutor. I don't think we've seen any report from there. I don't know, maybe the incumbent can tell us. Was there a status report on the Special Prosecutor's investigations into corruption allegations? Prosecution is not done by the president, you know. Attorney General, of course, does it. But in this case, I think the Special Prosecutor's Office is seized with the matter. I'm not going to ask the president, why has this case not gone to court? I would rather want to go to the Office of the Special Prosecutor and ask.
And there are a number of cases. You know, the Australian visa scandal, talk about the analysis investigation about a gentleman in the presidency. And it's surprising.
I thought I was going to outline.
It's surprising that as we talk about ABAJ, the Special Prosecutor had in fact frozen his accounts. But because of the lull in doing things, those that were supposed to ensure that that money was still frozen, not the Special Prosecutor, left the ball. And as we understand, he must have taken all his money out of the place.
Let's focus on those agencies and their managers who ought to have triggered the right processes.
These are serious national security issues. The president must have an eye on them.
Yeah, you know, but do you really need the president to ask the Special Prosecutor to prosecute, to conclude investigations and prosecute? Are we really interested in getting that
scenario? The entity that was supposed to ensure that his money stayed frozen, which is not the OSP at the time.
Yes.
Who is in charge? What has the president done? Does he know that he's been able to manage to take his money away?
Well, I don't know. If the person has withdrawn any money, I don't know.
I don't know if assets, you know that for a fact. Will he be concealing them by now?
So why? Okay, I see where you are coming from. Maybe you are asking that the president should be interested in that. If there's nothing happening, then he ought to sack those person he has appointed.
Because he appoints them.
Yeah, but even then sacking, we all know it goes through a certain process. This is the kind of democracy we've given to ourselves. You don't get up tomorrow morning after a electoral dream and sack somebody. We go through a process. But I think whilst we can legitimately ask questions of the president, we also ought to start asking questions of those we have put in place of some of these institutions. Unless they are telling us that the president has imposed an embargo of action on them. They are being paid salaries every month. They are getting all sorts of privileges and benefits. And they are there, sitting in the offices, What are they doing? They ought to be, and that's why the lady even asked for a status report relative to the office. And it's in the law, it's even in the act.
That's right.
Okay, so yes, I have no difficulty people asking the president questions and pushing him. But those who have put in place, for instance, the Galamsey thing you spoke about, I know the Office of Special Prosecutor began some investigations. There was even a conflict between them and the CID, which was messy. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, what was the status of that case when Martin was exiting? What is the status of that case now? Yes, of course, that thing happened to somebody who was working within the presidency. If you asked that the president should be a little bit more interested in that, I'll go along with that point. At least just casual, find out. You have officers who are in charge. What is going on with this particular case? Because it comes back to integrity of the presidency. Okay, so that's a good point. Look, the visa, so-called visa, Australia visa scandal, I cannot understand government as well as the police. I don't understand. They have concluded investigations. They have pinpointed those who did what. They even had a list of people they had to send to the courts. And I've said this many times, that why have they not published that report, at least? Because it keeps coming up. People keep asking. That's one of the so-called scandals people cite. Meanwhile, the Ghana CID has completed investigations. They had a little challenge with the Australian government in terms of exchange of information. The Australian position was that if we are going to use it for prosecution, then we are unable to give you all the details. I found that a bit weird. But the report is available. I have a copy. But I have decided that it's not my responsibility to do that service for anybody. I've actually told the gentleman, the former deputy minister of Youth and Sports, Piles, that go access a copy and on your own put it out there. But you see, are we talking of just the publication? We're also talking of the prosecution, because they listed people, names, addresses, and sent a docket to the Attorney General's office for prosecution of those persons. That's not my job. That's their job. See, there are other things the president was right on. Look.
So these high issues, high-profile issues, diminish the things the president talks about.
It doesn't help them, so I blame government communication to some extent. For instance, the Ken Bond thing. We made so much noise. This program dealt with it extensively. It went to Shraj. Shraj ruled on it. There was an aspect that Shraj went in that they didn't have to go in, so it ended up in court. But clearly, that case died. The finance minister was vindicated. We were waiting for the Luxembourg and the Department of Justice angle that the NDC said they had sent, and nothing came out. The cash for seat. Parliament sat on it, open. It was live. We saw the conclusion. The Boachi Ejako bribery thing. We saw the conclusion. So there are aspects that the president was right on, that have been investigated by the appropriate bodies. Look, the Shraj, Kulebu, A+ allegations.
Right.
It went to Shraj, CID investigated, some youth group took it to Shraj. Shraj vindicated the two deputy chiefs of staff.
The police also did.
Yes. In fact, there was a coincidence of the CID's findings with the Shraj one. It coincided. There was an aspect that Shraj declined jurisdiction. That audio, that video, the tape about former CID boss conversation.
But the questions of perception and people's difficulty, if you take the Australian visa issue, for example, people can't believe that some things are so glaring that you can come back to us with a report that suggests that this person is not liable, is not culpable.
You better read the report, because the report has what it takes to let you know that the Deputy Youth and Sports Minister was not culpable.
People can't believe that.
Well, they are entitled to their disbelief.
Okay.
Unfortunately, due process requires that we give everybody fair hearing and that we must come out with facts.
Is what the president's saying now, does it match with what he was preaching when, it was all gun blazing against Mahama for being, superintending unprecedented corruption? President is saying due process. I won't do what you are asking me to do. I will not just act on mere, allegations to do things.
Oh,
Doesn't match with what you were saying in campaign?
I'm sure if you go through our political history, there is no presidential candidate who has not done what you are suggesting, or no president who has said that I don't have to go through due process. They've all said so. And indeed, that's the fact. You must go through due process. It is not a kangaroo regime. We've witnessed, some of us were supportive of the June 4th insurrection. And we know the legal system that was applied. Okay? Yeah, so we've moved from there.
Right. This is what I'll do. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm coming to you for just 2 minutes each of a wrap. What your commentary will be on the fight from the front of the OSP and the presidency, what we should be looking to, what they should be doing right going into 2022. So 2 minutes each, organize your thoughts and deliver that to me. So we take a break and return to go to Parliament and look at the issues coming up from there. So Mary, start with you. Please unmute.
Okay, sir.
Good, go ahead.
Right, so something for me, let me start with the OSP. He has a mandate, and the mandate is a legal person. He has the understanding of the office. He has the competency to deliver on that mandate to ensure that he's investigating corruption. And this time we are calling on him not just to investigate, but then to quickly as possible begin prosecutions, which he has promised the people of Ghana on TV and on the radio that he's going to do. Again, the issue of corruption in Ghana, we have not done too well when it comes to asset recovery. So we want to see some processes being initiated in that regard as well. And I'm very sure from what Pepu has indicated that with the contract for sale issues, we all know what has happened with the freezing of accounts and with some of the things that have gone on. This can affect the fight against corruption if our institutions of state are not proactive enough to quickly activate their mandate to ensure that frozen assets are frozen, or assets are frozen, to ensure that investigations go on. And when the people are not found culpable, they are giving back their property. Otherwise, the state is the gainer of such. Again, we would want to see the Office of the Special Prosecutor putting in place its preventive protocols, because it's important not to just go after the corrupt, but also ensure that he is working together with other institutions of state mandated to fight corruption or prevent corruption, to ensure that the people down there are capacitated enough to report wrongdoing. It is a fact that people have become so apathetic because of our past and because of some of the repercussions they have had to suffer. If you go out there into public service and you ask people questions if they are willing to fight corruption, you would be very sad to hear some of the results that have come up. Again, let me say that we want to report corruption and we want them to be pursued, so they should do that. The presidency, as a matter of urgency, should begin to walk the talk, because so far the rhetoric has been the case. And we continue to say walk the talk because we have had instances that have been spoken to extensively, advocated extensively, which have not seen any action. Okay. We have had issues like the PDSs of our time. We have had others, the Maritime Authority, the GR. Sometimes you see people being elected to go quietly, and then the issues are not dealt with. And the issues around the Minister of Finance, Minister of Health, and the issues around procurement. If we are to fight corruption, for me, the presidency would have to come again on the issues around single sourcing, because he told us that one of the things he would do is to ensure that single sourcing is not the norm. But we have seen that the contrary is the truth. So he should begin to show action.
All right.
So that we say that, yes, what the president has said, he's living his word and not just doing. Because he mentioned some figures at the Anti-Corruption Day presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. And let me hear from Kofi Bentil also. And it's heartwarming to hear the majority leader, Oseche Mensah Bonsu, buy into the NDC's proposal for a certain decoupling of the Electoral Commission, because the Electoral Commission has an anti-corruption aspect, which role it doesn't play at all. It goes to sleep and just wait for elections and organize elections and goes away. Checking the political parties and their financing. Political parties in opposition have always been poor. Some time ago, this time, you know, the NPP is organizing its conference, and you know, there are no problems. They are not asking anybody to contribute a peswa. But in opposition, we get to know how even raising 1 million was a problem. Now they can organize these conferences every year. When in opposition, sometimes they have to, you know, even abandon organizing it at a point. Where do they get the money from? The EC is not checking them. So Chairman Sabonsu now supports the NDC's proposal for the EC to just take care of elections and have another body to ensure that this policing goes on. Yes, Kofi, in 2 minutes, what will be your concluding comments?
Right, Samson, you went to the EC issue. You are aware that we took that matter to court and we have a judgment.
That's right.
And
that's right.
It's requesting the EC to publish political party accounts. They have not done it.
Yourself and Nana Kwesi were correct?
Yeah, Nana Kwesi were and Citizen Ghana Movement, actually.
Right.
And these things all lie there, and they are aspects of the corruption fight. We felt that that was the root of fighting corruption, political party financing. And we went to court, got that judgment, and somehow, you know, they refused to do it. You fight to a point, and then, that is why I'm frustrated.
I hear you.
Okay? That is why I'm frustrated. And, you know, let's be clear about this. We all know what we felt about this president coming in, and we know what we are seeing. Okay? The truth of the matter is there is a principle of ultimate responsibility. And that principle, it's true everywhere. If it's happening under your watch, you are responsible for it. So I understand the, you know, excuses, but there are some glaring things too. You mentioned the Galamsey thing. It happened right there. You mentioned the Australian visa. Now, why don't they push and let's get to a bottom of these things so people will know? And then look, the presidency was actively involved in pushing out Domelevo. We will never forget that, because it took a lot of fight for people like myself, OG, and all kinds of people to fight to strengthen the Auditor General's office. And we got a person like Domelevo who was doing the job, and there was an active push to get him out, and they got him out. And the work he's done today is coming to naught.
And the Auditor General we have now doesn't seem to be interested in the surcharge and disallowance procedure.
Let's say it is
now in the 2020 audit report that I see him hint that he may do surcharge and disallowance.
Yes, but a surcharge.
He has set us back 10 years. 10 years of our work. Some of us risked our lives on the street. 10 years of work has been just washed away. And that is why I'm frustrated. What should we do? And I keep saying that we are risking our democracy with this joke around fighting corruption. Because when everything like what we have done, go to court, be on the street, fight on radio, fight on TV, confront politicians, do everything. When that fails, there's only one thing left. And we've seen what that did. Because you and I were here, we saw what happened in Rawlings time. Okay? And we don't want that to happen again. Which is why we all must be up and doing about this thing. Look, if you want to make money, don't go into public office.
Be careful before you are charged with treason.
Even if you are in public office and you do your job well, you will be sufficiently taken care of.
I've cautioned you.
Public officials today,
don't say I didn't caution you. Be careful before you are charged with treason.
Why? What have I said? I repeat, if you want to make money, don't go into public office.
Okay.
And I repeat, our public officials today are better paid than private sector people. Go and check.
All right.
So what is it?
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now
anyway,
let's
it's
hear
about the principle of ultimate responsibility, and I think our leaders going forward should show by example that they mean the fight against corruption.
Yes, Yao. 2 minutes to you.
Maybe the man is busy.
Please, your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Something I again will say that I am encouraged by the discussion because we are all zeroing in on operations, that we must all get involved in operations, that it is important that beyond the operations, step up to the plate and deliver. And so we shouldn't be afraid of any boundaries. In fact, there are no boundaries. And I repeat, there are no boundaries. We must, after the politicians have put things in place, open up the envelope and fight for operationalization. So I am going back to the Office of Special Prosecutor. I am telling Kisieji Ebing, use your power and zero in and deliver utility with what you have. And that will bring everybody behind you to get what you need. Beyond that, all the other agencies, SHRAJ, all the others, our society must question what they have done so far. Because if we all wait on the presidency, we won't get that far.
Okay.
And that is where we are coming from.
Thank you.
So we are in the position where all of us must operationalize and deal with the issues and challenges of operationalization.
Thank you very much. And Boabian Samoa is coming from the background of anti-corruption crusade work.
Yes.
Before he got into active. Yes. Right. So, Koku.
Yeah, just a quick one. For matter of education. Can the Auditor General be compelled by law, especially against the backdrop of the Supreme Court decision relative to the Occupy Ghana initiative? Can they be compelled by law to undertake what the Supreme Court said? Really?
Certainly.
Yeah. So you see,
Certainly.
there's a situation, if there's any hint of them not committing to the disallowance and surcharge, that perhaps we'll focus on that institution, focus on its managers, and get them to do what the law says they should do.
But why should us, private individuals, be put through that trouble of having to go and sue state institutions and get them to do things?
I'm suggesting it shouldn't be the president calling him to do that.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So
you are suggesting individual private initiative to go and compel them. Why should we always be doing this? We even pass laws, we don't implement, and it takes the individual private citizen to go and compel the state to implement the laws.
But we are still paying the Auditor General. We are paying him.
Yeah, that's right.
Your tax money is
right.
being used to pay him. So you have an interest. If it's not you, the individual, there are civil society groups that believe in good governance. It should be a collective effort. I'm not saying that the government we've elected must abdicate its responsibility.
That's right. Well, the Auditor General, in his audit report for 2020, he has discovered that we have lost in excess of almost 3 billion Ghana cedis as a result of irregularities committed by state institutions. And when they say irregularities, some of it is pure thievery, people stealing. And I've been reading the report, how people in your districts, obscure places are stealing money. Yeah. And we are just watching. We are not surcharging them. We are not disallowing. We are not prosecuting them. We'll be right back to get into Parliament. And for those of you who have been sending messages asking for the Momo contact for my project, Follow Me to the Prison Change. What change do you have? What little can you offer? Please send it to 059 303 8768. The Momo number is 059 303 8768, and the merchant name is Multimedia Group. Thank you very much. We are all potential persons who can find ourselves in the prisons, even when we may not have done anything wrong. Exactly. They should not be starving and starving in Christmas. And for those that can get some help and are clearly not, found themselves foul of the law in some way, we should try and get them out. Don't let them come out worse off than they went in. We are collectively safer if we show them love. Please send your donations to my project. And for those of you who may want to send us any products, yes, you can do so. Just call any of Joy FM's lines and inform them that you want to help us with any provisions or food stuff, and we will attend to you. The number to call is 030-2211-688 and 030-2216-504. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.